මෙවර ශිෂ්‍යත්ව විභාගයට මුහුණ දෙන පුංචි ඔයාලට අපෙන් අත්වැලක් ගම්මැද්ද තක්සලාව සතියේ දිනවල උදේ 9 සිට 10 දක්වා TV1 එකකින් පාඩම් කියා දෙනවා. TV1 නරඹන්න. ගම්මැද්ද තක්සලාව.
Newsfirst Newsline with Faraz Ali.
And a very good evening to you and welcome to Newsline Live. Except of course this evening, tonight, it is not Newsline Live, it's Newsline Recording because of the growing concerns of the COVID-19 pandemic. We have been forced to be prudent, and we're doing these few shows in the next couple of weeks by Zoom. Now then, my guest tonight is a very important character in the whole field of Sri Lanka's economy. He has been, for the last 1.5 years, been following the COVID-19 rules diligently, and he and his household have indeed done that. And that's why we waited 1.5 years. And he's none other than the former Deputy Governor of the Central Bank of Sri Lanka, Dr. W.A. Wijewardena. Very good evening to you, Dr. Wijewardena. Thank you for coming on Newsline Zoom.
It's a pleasure for me to be present here.
And Dr. Wijewardena, the whole country knows what the problem is. The problem is that our economy appears to be in tatters. And many people have come on Newsline Live and Newsline Recording and said what the problem is. But honestly, that's the problem. But what could be the solution? How do we deal with the economy and the perilous state of the economy now, Dr. Wijewardena? What would you say should we be doing?
For us, as it is, we have been hit by a number of economic problems today. One is this, chronic and acute foreign exchange shortage in the country, where our foreign reserves have fallen to the bare minimum level. Because end of July, after the government repaid $1 billion worth of international sovereign bonds on 27th of July, the foreign reserves have fallen to 2,800 million US dollars. Out of that, the usable foreign reserves amount only to 2,400, because there is this gold balance which has to be sold in the market in order to make any payment. So I think the government might even go for a sale of the gold balance, because without selling it, you cannot do anything. The only expectation for the country is that the International Monetary Fund, in its special drawing rights or SDR allocation of 650 billion in August, will allocate free 780 million US dollars worth of SDRs to Sri Lanka. And that will be credited to our account in the International Monetary Fund, and Sri Lanka would be able to use it immediately. So with that, the usable foreign exchange will go up to about, say, 3,200 million US dollars. But that is not sufficient for Sri Lanka to meet its all foreign exchange commitments that will arise as a result of our import program, number one. The repayment of external debt, number 2, and payment of interest on external debt, number 3. Because if we take the debt commitment, external debt commitments during the next 12-month period, it will come to about, say, 6,900 million US dollars. And the import program also, we require lots of foreign exchange in order to continue with the imports. So already when the importers go to banks to buy foreign exchange, they have been told by the respective banks that they have to wait until the bank collects sufficient amount of foreign exchange. That is because the central bank doesn't have any foreign exchange to release to the market. So this is one of the biggest problems we are facing. And on top of that, the second problem arises from the fact for us that the government had at the beginning of its formation in November 2019, it had announced a very attractive incentive package to taxpayers and the value-added taxpayers, which had created a huge dent in the government revenue. So in 2020 alone, the government had lost about say 519 billion Sri Lanka rupees by year revenue. A similar amount is expected to be lost in 2021 also. With on top of that, the government expenditure has ballooned because of the COVID-19 related expenses plus the normal government expenses. So there's a huge deficit in the government. To finance the deficit, the government will have to borrow from the market. To borrow from the market, government will have to allow the interest rates to go up, but the central bank is actually controlling interest rates. Interest rates around 5.5% for treasury bond bills and about say 7 to 8% for treasury bonds, at which rates the people are not willing to buy either of these documents. So as a result, the government has to now borrow from the central bank and commercial banks, and the total amount of borrowings during the last 18-month period, beginning from January 2020, ending in June 2021, from the banking sector has been about 2,800 billion Sri Lanka rupees. And that has created a huge increase in money supply. And everybody knows that when the money supply increases, it will create further pressure on the exchange rate to depreciate. At the same time, it will create inflationary pressures in the economy. Now, fortunately for the government, the Colombo Consumers Price Index, which is computed by a governmental authority, has not increased for us. It has increased only by about 6%. And that is because the food prices have not increased. But of course, for us now, the governments are losing throughout the world, losing the monopoly power of computing price indices. In Sri Lanka, we have an alternative price index calculated by a private research institution called the Addo Institutes. The Addo Institutes is calculating a Baht Curry Index, which actually measures the amount of money which a family of 4 has to spend per week to buy the necessary rice and the curries. Now that index has increased by 45% between June 2020 to July 2021.
I'm sorry to interrupt you, but 45%, 45%.
45%, that means for us, if a family of 4 has spent some 800 rupees per week in July 2020 to buy the necessary bath and curry, they had to spend now 1,300 rupees in July 2021, 45%. So that is the extent of the economic crisis that we are facing, because it has affected everybody. I mean, specifically the middle class in Sri Lanka.
So, Dr. Wijewardena, how should the government increase revenue to its coffers? How can they do that?
Well, the revenue, of course, right now they have to, because they cannot continue with this attractive tax concession that they had given to taxpayers, because the people who have benefited out of that are the high income people for us, not the low income people. Because these people are now paying a low amount of income tax, and also the VAT they had been paying, that also has come down. Because if the government wants to generate revenue today, what it should do is, number one, it has to increase the tax net, covering all the rich people in the country. And also there's a case for taxing those people, because in Sri Lanka, for us, the income distribution in Sri Lanka is such that the top 20% of income earners in society are getting 50% of the total income of the country. So that means a huge amount. I mean, you have to tap that amount, and because now Sri Lanka's total GDP is about, say, 15,000 billion Sri Lanka rupees. So 50% of that is about 7,500 billion. And even if you tax them at, say, 20%, you are realizing about, say, 1,500 billion Sri Lanka rupees.
Which 1,500 billion Sri Lanka rupees is eminently feasible.
From the rich people alone.
Right. And so that's eminently feasible, is it?
Yeah, it's actually, for that purpose, for us, what the government should do is to expand the tax net. It has to strengthen the Inland Revenue Department and train the officers and go after the people who are earning that income and get them to pay. That is what it has to do.
Now, in between all this, we have requests or demands even from section of the public service asking for an increased salary. But I put it to you, Dr. Wijewardena, that our public service has performed not very well indeed, and they have not collected enough taxes. Even the taxes that they're supposed to collect haven't been collected. Customs duties, we've had ministers who with the stroke of a pen have reduced duties or written them off and so on, and now today we have all the troubles have come home to roost. So how can we pay these people any more money? Where is the money coming from?
Well, Faraz, you can understand if the Bath and Curry index calculated by this Advocata Institute has increased by 45% over 12-month period, naturally, there should be a demand for higher salaries by the public servants and also by the employees in the private sector. But with the massive amount of money printed by the government during the last 18-month period for us, there will be a higher increase in the prices, and the prices will increase on two counts. Count number one is the printing of money by the central bank and the borrowing of the government from the banking sector. Second one is the Sri Lanka doesn't have enough foreign exchange to import the necessary food items. So as a result, there will be a shortage of food items in the market, and the shortage will be reflected in the price increases. But the government's strategy has been to impose price controls and prevent the market prices to show their actual prices. But that is being reflected for us now by people have to wait in queues to buy these commodities, and people are actually paying not in terms of money, but in terms of their time and also energy. Because when they have to spend in a queue for a long period of time, they are actually sacrificing their valuable labor. So the economy will lose as a result of that. So my understanding is that there will be many more demands for price salary increases in the future. I mean, the present one is simply the subjugated one. But with the expected shortages of goods in the market, and also with the expectation of the prices to increase due to the increase in money supply, there will be many more such demands. So we have to wait for that.
Are we going to be waiting until the bulk of the country is double vaccinated with both doses where necessary, and hopefully then the economy will be a little bit greater opened up, because we may see the arrival of tourists with I believe tourism contributes something like $4 billion to our economy. Is that what we may want to wait for?
Well, far as the tourism sector, the benefit to the country has been over-exaggerated, because nobody has talked about the fact that to maintain a tourist, we have to import goods and services from the rest of the world. If you take a tourist, say if he has brought say $100 to Sri Lanka, we have to spend $80 to maintain him in Sri Lanka. We have to import fuel, we have to import fuel in order to produce electricity for him, import vehicles for him to travel from one place to another. Even the food items are imported from the rest of the world, like the basmati rice and all that. The remaining amount in Sri Lanka is about $20. So therefore, what the government should concentrate right now is not to promote this tourism sector. It has to promote the sectors where we would be earning a net foreign exchange for Sri Lanka, like the ICT, information and communication technology. The 100% what we export would be actually earned by Sri Lanka. Then if you take the tea sector, about 90% of what we export is earned by Sri Lanka, rubber and coconut. So those are the sectors that we have to promote. Even in the apparel sector for us, the local value addition is about 40%. So if we export, say, $100 worth of apparels, we have to spend $60 to buy the inputs for the apparel industry. So that is where, because we are actually making money there because out of the volume, because we are exporting about, say, 5 billion worth of apparel. So 40% of that is about, say, 2,000 million US dollars, 2 billion US dollars. So that is a net earning for Sri Lanka. But 3 billion will go out of Sri Lanka. So this tourism sector, it has been overplayed in my view.
Okay, on that note, let's take a short break and take a peek at this evening's headlines from the primetime news. When we come back, we'll find out from Dr. W.A. Wijewardena what of the 48 sectors should the government be investing money and time in promoting. We'll see you on the other side of.
Newsfirst Newsline with Faraz Shaukatali.
Price regulations for COVID-19 tests, 6,500 rupees for PCR tests and 2,000 rupees for antigen tests. Opposition leader says the people must protect themselves from COVID-19 as well as from the government. Ayurveda approval for Dhammika Paniya suspended. 4 members of the IUSF who staged protests remanded till the 17th. 25 members of teachers' associations granted bail.
Newsfirst Newsline with Faraz Shaukatali.
And welcome back to Newsline Zoom. We're broadcasting from Lovina Place in Mount Lavinia. Our guest tonight is Dr. W.A. Wijewardena, former Deputy Governor of the Central Bank of Sri Lanka. We're talking economy. Dr. Wijewardena, what should the government be doing now? What is the most important 2 things that we ought to be doing now?
The top priority right now for the government is, number 1, to go to IMF and ask for a financing facility for us, because our foreign exchange problem, as I have explained, is a very acute problem. Because we don't have foreign exchange, and as a result, there is a fear by international investors that Sri Lanka might default in the future. And therefore, Sri Lanka cannot borrow from the international markets right now. So in order to build confidence among the investors, everything the government has to do is to get a certificate from the IMF. That certificate the government can get by asking for a financing facility for the International Monetary Fund. Unfortunately, the government is repeating it, at infinitum, that the government is not willing to go to IMF. And as a result, the problem is becoming more and more complicated day by day. But we had actually faced similar situations in the past. In 1988, when there was the JVP insurrection, in 2007, when the LTT war was at the peak, the Sri Lanka also had a similar situation like this. And at that time, the government had gone to IMF and got that financing facility, and government was able to get a breathing space in order to do the necessary reforms to put the economy back on a very solid economic growth path. Now, those experiences are very important for us, because presently, I think the government will have to consider going to IMF in order to get this facility and get a certificate from IMF, so that the IMF certificate will help the government to raise money from the industrial market. But at the same time, government has to introduce economy-wide economic reform, so that the business will be doing business would be easy for the private sector, and we have to actually expand our exports to sectors where we will be able to make a huge amount of net foreign exchange, like the ICT, export of ICT services, and the export of high-tech products. And all these things will have to be done as economic policy reforms. The second issue that I see for us is the present outbreak of the COVID-19 pandemic, the fourth wave. The fourth wave has now outbroken, and you have also now started, interviews on Zoom because we cannot meet face to face. And the number of patients per day is now increasing. Number of deaths are increasing. The main problem here is that we have to counter this as quickly as possible. If you allow it to fester, what would happen is we will come to a situation where we will not be able to control it for us. So that is why the medical profession is demanding the government to introduce immediate travel controls, lock down the economy immediately, so that you will be able to control it and then make a new start after you have eradicated the fourth wave. But unfortunately for the world government, Faraz, the situation is that after the fourth wave, there will be a fifth wave, and likewise it comes in waves. So after we have eradicated the fourth wave, what is necessary is to take action to prevent the onset of the fifth wave in Sri Lanka. So these are the two top priorities for the government today.
Can we, with any sort of sense, can we lock the economy down when 62% of Sri Lanka's workforce are actually daily waged workers? Can we afford to lock it down?
Well, yes, because it's not for the whole year. You may have to lock it down for maybe about for 3 weeks' time. Now, Sri Lanka is producing annually for us about the goods and services worth about, say, 15,000 billion Sri Lanka rupees. If we close it down, lock it down for 2 to 3 weeks' time, we may be losing about, say, 5% of that output, which means, it's an affordable thing. What is necessary is to lose it in order to make more money after the economy is open today. Because otherwise what would happen is, in any society for us today, the value that is given to human life is infinite, and now even economists are unable to compute and give a value to the human life. We can give a value to an animal because if the animal is traded in the market, there's a demand for the animal, there's a supply of the animal. The demand and supply will actually determine its value. But in the case of human beings who are not traded in the market, there is no way for us to calculate the value. So if we lose even one human life, the value is lost, is an infinite value. So that is why governments throughout the globe are taking it very seriously and also taking action to prevent the loss of human lives. So that is what I have to suggest.
And Dr. Wijewardena, what sort of percentage of GDP has the government of Sri Lanka spent on trying to help businesses to be in business and to pay the salaries? What percentage of GDP?
That is of course the salaries of the government servants is actually, if you take the total revenue of the government, for us, because the revenue has already declined to the lowest level possible because of the attractive tax concessions which the government has given to the taxpayers. Out of that revenue for us, we are now spending about, say, 80% on the salaries as well as on pensions of the public servants. So we have only balanced 20% for making all other payments. So that is why we are actually in a very critical situation today.
So what you're saying is that the government actually doesn't have any real money left to sort of subsidize the rest of the economy, because 75 to 80% goes on the public sector.
Exactly. I mean, once you have spent all of your money, I mean, our present problem is actually we have to use part of the revenue to pay interest of the public debt. The other part to pay the salaries of the public servants and the pensions of the public servants. So once you have done that, you don't have anything else left to do any other work in the country. So that is why we are borrowing. But we cannot borrow from external sources because we have lost the confidence of the foreign investors because they think that Sri Lanka might default in the future, and as a result, we cannot borrow anymore from the from the industrial market. So we have to borrow from the local market, and the local market we cannot borrow for us because the interest rates are controlled. So that is why money is printed.
But Dr. Wijewardena, whilst I hear what you say, I also notice that this government is carrying on spending money on roads, for example, on highways. There is some program to build or to supply 593 portable gyms at approximately 10 million each gym. I mean, honestly, aren't these vanity projects that we could do without right now?
Well, Faraz, right now we are in a situation where we have to decide on our priorities. Priority number one is to rehabilitate and rescue the economy and put it on a sound economic growth path. Once we have done that, we can go for that kind of, infrastructural investment. If we try to do that without putting the economy on in the correct path, what would happen is we are losing both.
We are losing more. So basically, the focus should be, the primary focus should be on what? Now, we've got all the vaccines. The vaccination program is going along. There have been a few hiccups along the way, but that's doing well now. So what is the primary focus? What should the primary focus be?
Primary focus should be, number one, as I have said, go to IMF and get a facility. Number two, eradicate the fourth wave of coronavirus COVID-19 pandemic as quickly as possible before it becomes uncontrollable. And you can to do everything else after that.
And why is the IMF being treated as some form of bogeyman by this government? What's so wrong about going to the IMF?
That is because I think due to some misunderstanding on the part of the people who talk against the IMF Faraz, because Sri Lanka is a member of the IMF and we joined IMF one day after Central Bank of Sri Lanka was set up on 28th of August 1950. And IMF is there in order to provide relief and facilities whenever a member country is facing this kind of a situation. And not only us, even the United Kingdom has borrowed from the IMF. So what is necessary for us today is to make use of that facility and get it. And also there's a fear that IMF might impose these conditions which the government cannot do. But anyway, we are now noticing, now IMF might ask the government to depreciate the currency, but currency has already depreciated in the black market for us. So therefore, there is no necessity for us to, do it on the advice of the IMF. It has already happened. And also the price controls have to be removed because the price controls have already killed the people. We have noted people waiting in queues to buy essential goods. So that is also part of the expenditure that they are spending, not in money, but in their energy and also time. So these are type of, reforms that we have to do, and government is reluctant to do those reforms. And I think my advice is that we must, right now, we have to seek this facility from the IMF to get the breathing space so that we will be able to start restructuring the economy to put it on a sound economic growth path in the future.
I've also noticed queues, talking about queues, I've noticed queues not only for essential items, but also in front of pawning shops. And I believe that the pawnbrokers are doing rather well, thank you very much. But that is an indication of the problem, isn't it, Dr. Wijewardena?
Yeah, I mean, linkage is, whenever the interest rates have come down in the market for us, people do not have enough liquid cash with them. So what they do is they actually sell the existing assets. So most of the people, the only asset they can sell immediately without any difficulties, the pawning of their jewelry that they are having. But after they have pawned their jewelry, there is no any more assets they can sell in the market. And the same thing you would have noted, the government is also doing the same thing. I mean, it is also trying to sell some of the assets which are available and which are lying idle. So the main reason is that if you try to control interest rates, one thing is that people start to generate income by by selling the assets that they are having, and the only asset they can sell in the market quickly is pawn in the jeweler. The second one is people go for illegal schemes like pyramid schemes, and they will lose their money by doing that. And there is again the spread of these pyramid schemes in Sri Lanka in a very big way today.
So we must be very careful about the rise in the number of so-called pyramid schemes, and we need to be, the public needs to be aware. Dr. W.A. Wijewardena, former Deputy Governor of the Central Bank of Sri Lanka, thank you very much for joining Newsline Zoom this evening, and we look forward to welcoming you at our studios in Dawson Street very soon indeed. Take care and God bless you.